In 2014, a young couple disappeared deep inside a remote stretch of the Appalachian Mountains after a weekend hiking trip meant to reconnect them. No signs of struggle, no campsite, no gear. Just a single camera memory card left behind on a ridge. For years, search teams, locals, and online communities argued endlessly about what happened. Some blamed the terrain, others whispered about something older, something the forest protects. Their families were left suspended between hope and dread, until a newly formed wilderness investigation unit stumbled onto a hidden ridge far beyond the original search perimeter. There, zipped tightly inside weather-worn sleeping bags, lay the couple's perfectly preserved remains, positioned as if someone or something had placed them gently rather than killed them. As investigators follow a trail of strange footprints, abandoned gear, and symbols carved into the trees, they uncover a chilling truth. The couple hadn't been alone in the woods. Something watched them. Something followed. And something made sure their final moments were never meant to be found. What began as a missing persons case becomes a quiet descent into a part of Appalachia where the forest behaves like it remembers, and where those who vanish often become part of a pattern older than any map. Before we go any further, if this is your first time here, we'd love for you to hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications. Your support means the world and helps us bring you even more powerful stories. Stick with us until the end. And if this mystery moves you, share your thoughts in the comments and pass it along to a friend. They were young, in love, and chasing the quiet of the Appalachians. Alex and Mia, two names that barely scratch the surface of their story, had packed their backpacks with the usual hiking essentials: a pair of sturdy boots, granola bars, a shared thermos of coffee. It was early September, the air crisp but not yet biting, the sun casting a golden haze over the ridges. They laughed as they climbed, voices carrying into the trees, echoing like they owned the mountains. No one could have guessed it would be the last time anyone heard that laughter. The trail was familiar to locals, worn and narrow, bordered by moss-covered rocks and twisted roots that threatened to trip the unwary. Alex, tall and eager, kept adjusting his sleeve, wiping sweat off his brow, while Mia adjusted her braid again and again, as if by fidgeting she could ground herself against some invisible fear. They stopped at a small creek to refill their water bottles, water rushing over stones, silver glinting in the sun. "Wow, this place," Mia whispered, her breath catching. "It feels like we're the first ones here." Alex laughed, pulling her close for a moment, the kind of laugh that makes your chest ache because it's so real, so alive. Somewhere on the outskirts of the trail, a group of older hikers paused. "You see those kids?" one muttered, nudging his companion. "They're asking for trouble. No map, no real gear, just wandering." His friend shrugged, shaking his head. They exchanged a quiet, knowing glance, the kind that passes judgment silently, like a warning left unspoken. Meanwhile, Alex and Mia carried on, oblivious, carefree, laughing over who could skip the largest rock in the creek without falling. Hours passed. The sunlight dipped lower, brushing the tops of trees with fire, shadows stretching long across the trail. Birds had gone silent. Even the wind seemed hesitant, holding its breath. Alex checked his watch. Early evening, still plenty of time to reach their planned campsite. But the path twisted into a dense section, the undergrowth clawing at ankles, branches snagging their jackets. "Feels different here," Mia said softly, voice almost a whisper. "Like the woods are watching." Alex laughed nervously, brushing past a tree trunk. "You're imagining it. Trees don't watch." But even as he said it, he scanned the shadows, a knot forming in his stomach. A few minutes later, they paused on a ridge. The valley spread below like a quilt of green and brown. Alex squinted, adjusting his cap, then blinked. Mia pulled out her camera to snap a photo, crouching low as her fingers trembled slightly. "This'll be perfect for Instagram," she joked, but her laugh was hollow, wavering. The wind picked up, rustling leaves in a sudden, sharp hiss. A crow cawed from somewhere above, breaking the tension just enough to make them both jump. They didn't notice the trail behind them narrowing. the branches entwining tighter, as if guiding them somewhere unknown. By nightfall, they were supposed to make camp. They hadn't. The trail seemed to stretch endlessly, twisting back on itself, confusing them. Their flashlight flickered. The air smelled damp, earthy, faintly of decay. Not yet alarming, but noticeable. Maybe we should turn back, Mia suggested, voice soft, uncertain. Alex nodded, adjusting his backpack straps, gripping them tighter as if that could steady his courage. Yeah, maybe, he murmured. But he didn't move. Somewhere off the path, the faint sound of running water echoed strangely, closer than it should have been. And then, silence. No voices, no laughter. Just the rustle of leaves and the occasional snap of a twig under invisible feet. Hikers on another section of the trail later said they saw shadows moving, fleeting glimpses of two figures that vanished too quickly, like ghosts slipping between trees. Locals began whispering afterward, about the couple who never returned, about the smell of campfires where no fire had burned, about strange patterns in the dirt near the ridges. They just disappeared, one neighbor said, shaking his head, like the forest swallowed them whole. The last known moments of Alex and Mia were quiet, ordinary, yet pregnant with an unspoken tension. They laughed, they stumbled, they adjusted straps and braids and sleeves, but every small motion now feels like a prelude. Every whisper of wind, every shadow stretching long against the trail seems deliberate. As if the mountains themselves were taking note. Waiting. Characters introduced. Alex, male, Mia, female, a few local hikers, observers. Key narrative beats. Couples preparation and hike. Early interactions, laughing, minor micro movements, fidgeting. Subtle foreboding in nature and bystanders' whispers. Sensory immersion, sight, sound, smell, touch. Slow tension, building with hints of something watching. The morning after Alex and Mia vanished, the town woke to a quiet that felt wrong. The usual clatter of coffee cups and car doors seemed muted, as if the forest had extended itself into the streets. Rumors started whispering through local diners and gas stations. "You hear about those kids, the couple?" one woman asked another, voice low, eyes darting over her shoulder. "Yeah. Last anyone saw them, they were climbing the ridge near Hollow Creek. Never came back." Neighbors shook their heads, sipping coffee that tasted suddenly bitter. Some rolled their eyes. "Probably just went off trail, spent the night somewhere." "Happens all the time," an old man muttered, but even he didn't sound convinced. A shadow of unease had settled across the town, threading itself into the very air. Search parties were hastily organized. Friends, locals, and even park rangers combed through the Appalachian slopes, boots crunching on leaves, the sharp smell of pine resin thick in their noses. Every snap of a twig, every rustle of a bush drew a collective shiver. Volunteers whispered among themselves, "Check the creek first. They love that place. Maybe someone saw a car pull up. I swear I heard voices near the ridge last night." The forest seemed almost to mock them, offering no answers, only longer shadows and confusing trails that led nowhere. Alex's parents arrived, faces pale, voices tight. His mother gripped a thermos like a lifeline, clenching and unclenching her hands, blinking away tears that never seemed enough. Mia's father lit a cigarette, pacing, jaw tight, muttering under his breath. "Why'd they go so far? Why didn't they tell someone?" His words dissolved into the wind, swallowed by the trees themselves. Even family hope felt fragile, threadbare. Days turned into a week. The searchers grew weary, their legs aching from constant hiking, backpacks heavy with supplies. Some stumbled across abandoned gear, Alex's water bottle near a creek, a frayed shoelace, a bent trekking pole. But no bodies, no real clue. Every find sparked a flurry of excitement and dread. Volunteers whispered and speculated. "Someone must have taken them." "No, the woods. It's the woods." "Maybe they left of their own will." No one had answers. At night, the mountains held their silence. Campfires flickered in small clusters of searchers, Faces drawn, eyes haunted. Conversations drifted in hushed tones. I can't shake the feeling someone's watching, one ranger confessed, tossing a log into the fire. His companion laughed nervously, glancing over his shoulder. You've been in the woods too long, buddy. It's just shadows. But even as he said it, the wind carried a whisper, almost a sigh, weaving between the trees. Hmm. A sound no one could place, yet everyone felt. Days stretched into weeks. Posters went up in the town, photos of Alex and Mia smiling, laughing, frozen in a moment now impossibly distant. The faces of neighbors and strangers alike reflected sorrow, unease, and something harder to name, a creeping fear that maybe, just maybe, the mountains had claimed them. And that fear took root in the small conversations overheard in corner stores, behind cafe counters. I heard hikers found something near Hollow Creek last night. What do you mean something? Like what? I don't know. A sleeping bag maybe? Someone said it moved. Stop. You're just trying to scare me. And yet none could stop themselves from imagining the truth, the forest quietly holding its secrets. The days blurred. Searchers grew restless, exhausted, and some began leaving, claiming the terrain too treacherous, the mystery unsolvable. Locals whispered, "They're gone. The mountains. They don't give up their own. Kids like that. They vanish sometimes and the forest keeps them." The forest had already begun rewriting the story. Every footprint, every snapped twig, every late-night rustle was a small note in the pages no one could read yet. And as the sun dipped behind the Appalachian ridges, casting long, unnatural shadows, one thought lingered in the minds of those still searching. Maybe Alex and Mia were not lost. Maybe they were waiting for someone to finally notice where the forest had taken them. Characters and micro-moments, searchers, exhaustion, whispers, subtle gestures, rubbing eyes, adjusting straps, tossing logs. Locals, gossip, whispered judgments, emotional responses. Families, tension, anxiety, inner thoughts, small human quirks. Forest, almost a character itself, subtle cues, sounds, shadows. Key narrative beats, community reacts and whispers. Search begins, slow and methodical, with small discoveries. Nighttime unease, campfire confessions. Forest portrayed as enigmatic, almost sentient suspense builds gradually, no sudden revelations. By the end of the second month, the search had thinned to almost nothing. Volunteers stopped showing up. Rangers redirected their workload. Even the posters in the grocery store window began to curl at the edges, sun-bleached and ignored. Time has a way of dulling fear, turning panic into background noise, and eventually into silence. The town slipped back into its routines, but something had changed. Like a layer of dust covering everything. Subtle, but permanent. Whenever someone mentioned Alex or Mia, people lowered their voices, glanced at the floor, shifted their weight as if the memory itself made them uncomfortable. Gossip faded from loud, curious whispers to quiet, tired murmurs. Inside the diner, two mechanics talked over their plates of eggs. Crazy how fast folks forget, one muttered, using his fork to push eggs across his plate. The other snorted. Forget? Nah, they just stopped caring enough to look. They both shrugged, glancing toward the mountains through the diner's fogged window. The peaks stared back, cold and unbothered. Alex's mother still folded his laundry every Sunday, placing his shirts neatly into a drawer no one opened anymore. Mia's father kept her bedroom untouched, brushing his fingers over her hairbrush every morning before work, chewing his lip until it bled. And yet, even they began moving differently, more slowly, more carefully, as if the weight of not knowing had settled into their bones. 5 years passed, then 6. The seasons rolled in predictable cycles. Snow blanketing the ridges, spring thawing them, summer flooding the trails with tourists who didn't know the story, didn't care. The mountains didn't change, but the people did. Locals still swapped small comments now and then. You ever think they ran off? One store clerk whispered to another while stacking cans. Together? Without a word? Nah. Something else happened. Like what? The clerk shrugged. Dunno. Woods don't forget, that's all I know. The old ranger, Porter, a man who had spent more nights in the forest than in his own home, retired after 15 years on the job. Folks said he left because of his health, but everyone knew it was the couple's case that broke something in him. People noticed how he'd go quiet whenever their names came up, rubbing the bridge of his nose, blinking slowly as if trying to erase an image only he could see. Sometimes hikers reported strange things. Sleeping bags shredded like something dragged them, odd circles pressed into mud near hollow trees, a faint smell of smoke where no one had camped. Rangers brushed these off as animal activity, but locals exchanged that look, the kind that says we know better, but let's not poke the wound. By year 7, the case file was stuffed in a cabinet no one touched. Pages yellowed, photos faded, coffee stains dried into the corners. Cold cases don't freeze. They rot quietly, sinking into the floorboards of a town's memory. Still, every now and then, someone brought it up again. A teenager in the gas station pointing at the ridge through dirty glass. That's where they vanished, right? An older man filling his truck. Yeah, and the forest hasn't given back a damn thing since. A woman overhearing them, shaking her head. Don't say it like that, it's creepy. The man shrugged. I didn't make it creepy. The forest did. Even a decade later, the disappearance felt unfinished, like a book missing half its pages. And the strangest part? There was no sense of finality, no acceptance. Just a quiet pause in the story, as though something was still unfolding out of sight. People said the mountains had simply taken Alex and Mia. Others said someone else had. But most believed the truth sat somewhere in the soil, buried deep, waiting. And all the while, the Appalachian woods stood still, dark, patient, holding something close, refusing to let go. Soon, though, the forest would finally shift. And what it would reveal wouldn't be gentle. It would begin with 2 sleeping bags, half buried, half rotten, and placed somewhere no human should have reached. Not by accident, but by intention. It was early spring, mud thick on the trails, air cold enough to sting the lungs, when the forest finally stirred. A pair of surveyors, out marking new boundaries for a trail expansion, stepped into an area people rarely crossed. It wasn't forbidden, just avoided. The kind of place the woods seemed to whisper about. The first surveyor, Dan, kept adjusting his gloves, tugging at the fingertips like they were too tight. The second, Lorena, walked ahead in slow, deliberate steps, boots sinking softly into wet soil. They weren't talking much. The forest felt heavy that morning, like sound didn't want to travel. After an hour of walking, Dan stopped, eyes narrowing. Hold up, he murmured, lifting his chin. Lorena followed his gaze to something half buried under a slope of moss and rotting leaves, a shape that didn't belong. Something fabric-like. Something still. They moved closer, brushing away leaves with gloved hands. Mud smeared across bright nylon. A sleeping bag. Dan exhaled slowly. Someone camped here? Lorena shook her head immediately. No one camps this far in. The silence around them thickened. They uncovered more of it. The sleeping bag was zipped fully, edges frayed, the material weather-worn and stiff. When Lorena pressed her hand against the side of it, she froze. Something inside didn't shift or crumple like cloth. It held shape, structure, weight. A stillness spread between them. Neither spoke, but both knew. This wasn't abandoned gear. This was a body. Lorena stepped back, swallowing hard. Call it in, she whispered. The Rangers arrived an hour later, boots thudding through the undergrowth, radios crackling faintly. Porter, now retired, had come along after hearing the location. His face looked older, somehow sharper, fear and duty tangled in his expression. They began clearing the area, careful, methodical. Mud scraped back. Moss peeled away. And then someone spotted the second sleeping bag, tucked just behind the first, almost hidden under a fallen branch, as if placed deliberately. 2 bodies, side by side. Unmoving, preserved by cold and time. Rangers exchanged soft curses under their breath. Lord, that's them, one muttered. Another ranger leaned closer, adjusting his radio nervously. Why are they placed like this? It looks, I don't know, arranged. Porter didn't answer. He just stared. When they unzipped the first bag, the smell hit faintly. Earthy, stale, not fresh decay, but the deep, old scent of something long settled. Inside lay skeletal remains curled in a fetal position. A few scraps of clothing clung to bone. A rusted zipper pull hung from the edge of a jacket. Mia. And in the second bag, Alex. Their bodies had not been scattered, not dragged, not torn apart. They had been protected, sealed, almost tucked in. Rangers shifted uneasily, trading glances. This doesn't look like an accident, a younger ranger said softly, scratching his jaw. Or an animal attack, another added. Dan and Lorena kept their distance, eyes wide, whispering to each other behind their hands. Who would put them here? Not who, maybe what. Stop, don't start that. Porter crouched beside the sleeping bags, shoulders tight, breath shallow. He brushed dirt from the fabric with trembling fingers. They didn't walk here, he murmured. The others froze. They couldn't have. This terrain, this distance, they weren't found where they vanished. Someone, something, brought them. Even the birds were quiet. For a long moment, no one spoke. The forest stood still, shadows long and unmoving. Every branch seemed to lean inward, listening. And then a ranger's voice cracked through the silence, barely above a whisper. Why would someone take the time to keep them together? No one answered. Because the real question wasn't why, it was how. And in the stillness of those mountains, that question felt like it had teeth. The clearing falls into a dead silence as the storm clouds finally thin overhead. What little daylight leaks through the tree line paints the scene in a sickly gray. Every member of the team stands still for a moment, listening, breathing, absorbing the wrongness of this place. Then, Agent Rourke breaks the quiet. All right, nobody wanders alone. Cameras on, masks up. Let's document everything. The team splits into two tight groups, sweeping the perimeter first. The clearing sits in an unnatural depression, almost as if something heavy had once taken root here, pressing the soil down over the years. And the soil is wrong, damp, black, too soft, almost spongy under their boots. As they kneel to sample it, the ground leaves faint smears on their gloves, thick like residue rather than dirt. Rourke moves toward the center, where the strange antlered effigy stands. Up close, it's worse. Twisted branches wrapped with old sinew-like cords, all interlaced with faded scraps of red cloth. The base is surrounded by what look like small stone piles arranged in a deliberate spiral, each topped with an animal bone. But then Torres notices something. These stones? They're not from this region, she whispers. What do you mean? They're river-worn, perfectly smooth. There's no river close enough for this to be natural. Someone carried every stone here, intentionally. And then the second group radios in. Rourke, you need to see this. They follow the call to the tree line on the far edge of the clearing, and the moment they arrive, every light swings down toward the roots. A large, half-buried pouch sits wedged between two protruding roots, its leather cracked but intact. Rourke crouches, gloves brushing across the surface. The leather is patterned, not just stitched, but etched with symbols. Angular shapes, circular loops, vertical slashes. Nothing familiar, nothing comforting. He unbuckles the flap. Inside the pouch are 5 objects, each wrapped in cloth. 1. A small wooden figurine, humanoid, faceless, its limbs elongated. 2. A rusted tin whistle, hand-forged, etched with more of the same symbols. 3. A black-bound notebook, swollen from moisture but still legible. 4. A child's mitten, blue with a faded white stripe. 5. A clump of dried grass and something pale tangled inside. Hair. Torres exhales sharply. Is that human? Rourke doesn't answer. Behind them, flashlights sweep further along the roots, and someone finds more cloth. Not a pouch this time. A tarp. Half buried. Heavy. The team digs around its edges until they can drag it free. The moment they unfold it, the clearing seems to tilt. Because inside the tarp is a bundle of aged rope, tightly coiled, stained dark in several places. And next to it, a wooden plank with scratch marks. Dozens of them. The same length, depth, and spacing. Like fingernails. Torres steps back, her breath catching. This wasn't just a ritual site. Someone was tied here. Rourke's eyes lift toward the surrounding trees. You feel that? He mutters. Feel what? Someone asks. He scans the tree line. We're being watched. Then another agent, Danner, calls from behind the effigy. You need to come here, now. They gather around him at the far right quadrant of the clearing, where the soft soil is disturbed by indentations. Deep, irregular, and spaced apart. At first, they look like footprints, but only at first. Each indentation is elongated, ending in two sharp points at the front. No heel, no arch, just weight pressed down on something not shaped like a human foot. Torres whispers, "What made that?" Danner swallows hard. It wasn't walking, look at the intervals. He points to the spacing. Too wide, too inconsistent. It crouches, climbs, jumps. Rourke stares at the forest. It was here recently. The clearing grows colder, though the air is still. No wind, no movement. The weight of the woods presses closer, tighter, until every breath feels shallow. Then someone's radio crackles. Static. A long hiss. Followed by something that should be impossible. A whistle. High, slow, descending 3 notes. The same melody the witnesses described. Every agent freezes. Rourke grips his flashlight tighter as he turns toward the direction of the sound. Stay sharp, he murmurs. But the forest does not respond. It only watches. And whatever is watching is close. The clearing has gone completely still. No birds, no wind, no distant branches shifting. Just that melody. 3 descending notes floating somewhere in the trees like a breath that doesn't belong to anything human. Rourke signals the team to move in a tight formation. Sector sweep, now. Whatever made that sound is still here. As they pivot toward the source, their flashlights carve thin tunnels of light through the dense undergrowth. Every trunk seems too wide. Every shadow feels like it's holding its breath. Then Danner's beam catches something. Hold, what is that? The lights converge on a patch of mud just beyond the clearing. At first, it looks like another irregular indentation. But the moment Torres kneels, her breath shudders. This one isn't a track, it's a palm print. A large one. Pressed deep, but with only 2 elongated fingers. Before anyone can process that, the forest shifts. Not with sound. With movement, a tree trunk, thick, gnarled, seems to slide out of alignment with the others. Not topple, not sway, just shift. Rourke lifts his rifle flashlight and points it dead center on the trunk. And the trunk blinks. 2 slick obsidian eyes flash back the beam. Reflective, unblinking, set too far apart to belong to anything human. Danner whispers, "Oh God." The shape moves again. Faster this time, not away, around, circling. Branches snap somewhere behind them, deliberate and heavy. The clearing, once a single open space, now feels like a closing throat. Back to back, Rourke orders, voice shaking for the first time. Do not fire unless you see what you're shooting. Then the whistle returns, this time much closer, lower, slower, like something mimicking the sound, not producing it naturally. Torres exhales. Barely audible. It's playing with us. The eyes reappear, this time above them, higher than any man could climb in seconds. The beam catches the outline, a long shape clinging to a tree. Limbs bent at disturbing angles, a body that blends with bark. Antlers, real antlers, growing not from a skull but from a twisting mass of something that used to be a head. The creature stays perfectly still, watching, studying. Then it drops. Not onto the team, but onto the center of the clearing, landing in a crouch so silent it feels rehearsed, so deliberate it feels intelligent. The agents raise their weapons. The creature lifts its head, and from somewhere deep in its chest cavity, a sound leaks out. The whistle. 3 descending notes, perfectly mimicked. Torres steps back, dread carving through her voice. Rourke, those markings on the notebook, they weren't ritual symbols. Rourke keeps his light locked on the creature. What do you mean? She swallows. They're warnings. The creature stands to its full height. Tall, impossibly tall, its limbs stretching like they're unfolding for the first time in years. Something dangles from its left antler, a strip of fabric. Blue, with a faded white stripe. The child's mitten. Danner whispers, breaking apart inside. No, no, we're done. We are done. The thing tilts its head. Not with aggression, with recognition, like it remembers every print they found, every missing person, every night someone heard the whistle. And then it turns, steps back toward the tree line, and melts into it. No rush, no chase, just a deliberate retreat, disappearing between 2 pines that seem to close behind it. The clearing exhales, the forest loosens, but no one feels relief. Rourke lowers his rifle, hand trembling. We're leaving, he says quietly. Torres looks at him. We're going to report this, right? A long silence. Then, no, Rourke says. Some things don't go in a report. They hike back in a staggered formation, every crack of a twig making them flinch. At the ridge, before losing sight of the clearing entirely, Rourke turns back one last time. The trees stand motionless. Then, just before he steps away, he hears it again. 3 descending notes. Soft, patient, almost amused. The forest keeps the last word, and whatever lives there knows they'll never return. If this story pulled you in, if the mystery stayed under your skin, then don't just scroll past it. Hit like so more people stumble into this case. Drop a comment. Tell me what you think really happened out there. And if you want more cold trails, eerie disappearances, and stories the forest tries to bury, then make sure you subscribe and turn on notifications. Because the next story? Yeah, it's even darker.